All right. I'm just finishing setting this up, but what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another post game here on Met Central. I don't know where to begin with this one, other than just yet again dog shit. And I'm sorry if anyone wanted me to come on here and get pissed off, throw my chair, whatever. I can't do that. Simply because I saw it coming. I simply just saw it coming from a mile away. Any Met fan that has been around the block for a while, I should say, knew this was coming, and here we are. All I could say right now, did we get an update on why Nunez didn't?
Yeah, forearm tightness.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, all I could say right now is I don't want to hear anything about this team making the postseason the rest of the way. I don't. The Cubs are right on their ass, and on top of that, the Braves don't stop losing. They lost to a team that's in front of them, blowing a game nonetheless, and they did it against the Padres. You are not a postseason caliber team when you are losing games in this fashion multiple times within the span of weeks within the same road trip. You're not convincing anyone, and mostly the smart fans, that you are a postseason team. I get the math that they're not out, but barring a magical 10-game win streak, which who the hell knows if that's even enough at this rate with the way the Braves are playing, barring a magical run, we're done here. This is the type of loss that tells me this team cannot hang around with the big boys, because it's the same garbage. And I tweeted it. I feel like we're in a time warp yet again, because it's the same patterns of that 2019 team where the Mets can't gain ground when they do win. You have Edwin Diaz blowing games, or if it's not him, it's someone else in the bullpen. The offense only scores in bunches because they didn't check in until the fifth inning, and then after the fifth inning, they checked out. And if it wasn't for a poor tag attempt by the catcher, they wouldn't have scored in that sixth inning. So the offense still scores in bunches, and then you have a manager that, for whatever reason, tried to be way too cute tonight. And I cannot understand what Mendoza's thought process was throughout the entirety of the night, because forget about the injury or whatever it is going on with Nunez. You go down the list here. Severino, I don't know how the hell he got 9 strikeouts with the way he pitched, because he was just pitching around the lower part of the lineup. Only had 1 walk somehow, though, which, again, I don't understand. But his pitch count was up early. Threw 100 pitches in under 5 innings. Allowed 4 runs and allowed those 2 home runs. Just couldn't locate. And after he got hit by that line drive, his velocity was clearly down. He clearly was not the same. His mechanics looked off. And then Brazoban comes in. And I think every Met fan is like, why the hell is Brazoban in this game and not Budo? But it worked out. Fine. Danny Young comes in, does what he has to do, gets the lefties out. Then Reed Garrett comes in, and it's like, what the fuck are we doing here when he pitched yesterday? But it ends up working out somehow. Phil Maton comes in. We're all asking the same thing. What the fuck is going on here? Because he was in yesterday's game. Why is Nunez not in? Why is Budo not in? And Maton was fine. And then for whatever reason, despite Maton being fine, if this was a scenario where Maton, got the 8 and 9 hitters out, and then it flipped over to Carroll, and then Mendoza's like, you know what? Let's put Edwin Diaz in here. I would be like, all right, fine. I get the logic. You want your closer against the higher leverage part of the lineup. But Maton was doing fine, and you take him out against, at the time, Luis Guillorme, who was hitting. And if it wasn't him, Pavin Smith, that's who you're afraid of Phil Maton facing. And then Edwin Diaz at the end of the day has to get the job done. He didn't. And he is backing up every single point that everybody made when he got that contract of why you do not pay relievers. And I can tell you right now, it is a mistake the Mets have made time and time again. They did it again because of the cute trumpet intro marketing. And now they're probably regretting it. Edwin Diaz, if this team wants to hang on to that very sliver of hope they have left to make the postseason, Edwin Diaz cannot be getting the high leverage outs. He couldn't get the lower leverage outs. I do not want to see him close games. Give me Dedno Nunez if he's fine enough to pitch down the stretch here. Give me Jose Budo. Give me even Phil Maton, who has been better. I have had enough of watching Diaz pitch in these big outs, and I've seen enough to know that this is just what it is. I've been yapping for 6 minutes. I will let you get your piece in.
I'm livid. I'm pissed off. They've thrown away 2 series. They should have beaten the Padres, and they should have taken 3 out from the Padres, and they should be up 2-1, or 2-0 right now in the series. They should be up 5-1 right now on this 10-game road trip, but instead they've blown. I don't know. I don't see them winning the series tomorrow. I think they drop it. They're throwing games out the window, and this is the Kurt Suzuki game all over again. Maybe to a lesser extent because they didn't have such a big lead, but just grand slam. Obviously, this one wasn't a walk. I was in the 8th inning, but it had the same just gut punch, and it's just it hurts. But they wasted this game because you have Severino, who pitched like ass tonight. Apart from the first inning, he only gave you 4 2/3 innings. He had 51 pitches through 2 innings. He pitched like ass. Like you said, I don't know how we got 9 strikeouts and 1 walk. I mean, that's pretty impressive from that part. But the offense didn't show up apart from those 2 innings, which, listen, fair play. You got the 5 runs. It should have been enough to hold on. But Carlos Mendoza, Diaz blew the game, right? Let's just keep that straight facts, right? He blew the game. But Carlos Mendoza has got to take some responsibility because he was playing way too much with fire. He tried to manage the game too cute. And this is why I don't like it. When you're chasing teams and you need to win a game, especially to win a series, when you already took the first game, use your best pitchers in this game to get you through this game and at least secure a series win at minimum.
And you're playing the White Sox next.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be cute to try to schedule. Oh, okay, but maybe if I could fool around here, get through this game with my lesser pitchers, I could potentially set up a sweep tomorrow. No, when you need games, exactly, over managing. And listen, I like Mendy. I think he's going to be a really good manager in the future. But in these playoff races, when every single game matters, when every single out matters, you can't overmanage the game. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut and say, listen, I'm going with my best guys here. He didn't do that. He did it with Braulzaban. It didn't bite him in the ass. He went back to Reed Garrett for a second day in a row. It didn't bite him in the ass. The Maton one, while he wasn't bad, I wouldn't have went to Maton in that situation because I'm like, give me Budo here. And I know Budo's been a little shaky lately. I understand that, but he's had a couple days rest. I would have used him in that situation because most likely facing the bottom of the order, he gets you through that inning, and then you have Diaz for the 9th inning, and it's a clean inning at that point. You have nobody on base. But I don't know what the problem is with Diaz because even I remember during the Padres series, I forgot which game it was, but they mentioned how Diaz. I don't know if he talked about it or it was just hinted at, but they said that Diaz likes to work a lot of games in a short period of time. He doesn't like to stretch out his appearances, and he feels like if he pitches in games close to each other, that he's much more in rhythm. Now, I don't know if that's affecting him that much, but because I'm telling you right now, this is now back-to-back games where his slider, he hung it over the zone, and it's costed them. He hung a slider to Jackson Merrill, and he hung a slider again to Corbin Carroll. I don't know what his issue is, but and it's tough right now because you mentioned like that you can't put him in high leverage spots anymore going down the stretch. But it's like you look at this bullpen, it's like apart from Dednell Nunez, who right now is forearm tightness, like we don't know like how he's doing in terms of is he going to go back in the IL again? Is he fine? Was this precautionary? We don't exactly know, but who's the guys you really trust in high leverage situations right now? Because even though like I said about Budo, he's been a little shaky lately in high leverage situations. So do you exactly trust him? I don't know. Nunez, like I mentioned, we don't know about his arm. And then you have guys like Stanek, who you don't trust in high leverage situations. You don't trust Braziban in high situations. You don't trust Reed Garrett in high situations. Like the Mets right now have a serious problem with their bullpen because you look at this bullpen and it's a bunch of guys who can pitch in mid leverage situations, and it's not enough guys who can pitch in high leverage situations like you see. Like we just came out of a series with the San Diego Padres. Look how stacked that Padres bullpen is. From the 7th inning on, it's like it's shut down. Now listen, I get it. It's baseball. You know, you're not going to be perfect. There will be games where your bullpen blows. It happens, but for the majority of the time, you can look at that Padres bullpen and say, "Listen, I can trust them to go get me 9 outs in a game."
And the problem is, it's different when it's happening every single series. It's one thing if, you know, once a week or every other week you have a bullpen blip here and there thrown in, but it's happening just way, way too much. And this needs to change the entire approach of this offseason. I mean, we said it rolling into the season that no Met fan was comfortable with what they had for the high leverage guys. And then it got worse as the season progressed because Brooks Raley went down. Adam Ottavino regressed heavily, more than I mean, he was already bad last season, but we thought, all right, maybe he'll at least be like somewhat respectable maybe this season, but he's regressed even further. And Nunez just came out of nowhere to help, and you had that month and a half run of Reed Garrett, which helped you. But now that you don't have these guys, you're starting to see this bullpen have issues, and this needs to change the entire outlook of next offseason because I don't want them to commit next season to Diaz being the closer. And this was my issue going into the season. You need closer by committee, because there are some days where Diaz is going to be unavailable. You need to have certain guys that can pitch high leverage outs. There are times where Diaz cannot get this much rest in between appearances, and you need guys that could get those high leverage outs. So it's like, okay, we could use Diaz when we're up by, 7-8 runs because he needs to get work in, because it's fine because tomorrow we could just put this guy in. I know Rogers just hit the waiver wire. If the Mets have a chance to claim him, I would seriously take a look there, because at this point, I mean, your bullpen options are just terrible. Like you mentioned, I mean, there's just nobody right now you could trust outside of Nunez, who is probably headed for the IL with the way Mendoza, because I have the clip up. Mendoza did not sound confident that Nunez is going to be fine down the stretch. And at this point, shut him down. I'd rather not run his arm into the ground when this team is probably cooked anyway. If he goes down, I mean, you have Maton, who you might trust in high leverage spots, and that's it right now. Like, I don't know. They need to change their entire approach though next season with the bullpen. And I get relievers are a crapshoot to begin with, but they can't do this garbage again of just having a mixed bag of, because I described it, was it like the deadline stream or sometime after, where I described it as they have a grouping of relievers where all these guys are in the same tier, where they're just not good enough. And that's just the problem. And they need to find a way to change that. And a lot of that will have to do with a certain pitching coach that needs to go. Because I mean, he has no clue what the fuck he's doing.
Well, that's what I was going to point to this one and say, like, Mendoza doesn't have any feels for his pitchers, but this now comes to a whole coaching problem, because Jeremy Hefner,
Hefner's an idiot. I don't know what he said
Jeremy,
to Diaz on the mound, but Jesus.
no, but Jeremy Hefner is supposed to be the so-called pitching maestro of this coaching staff, right? So why isn't he assisting Mendoza? Like, listen, I get it. Mendoza is eventually going to have to learn how to handle the bullpen himself. But in terms of, this is his rookie season, he's going to make mistakes. Why isn't Jeremy Hefner, who, like I said, the supposed pitching guru, why is he not assisting Mendy and making some suggestions about, who to use guys where in what situation? Because right now it just seemed like Mendy just like, I don't know how he determined the order of guys he was using today. Like, it worked out apart from up until it got to DS, but I think that was just more kind of luck than genius, because on any other day, Brazabon gets lit up, Reed Garrett gets lit up. There needs to be, not only does there have to be a major bullpen overhaul, which, listen, I understand the whole pitching rotation next year is going to get an overhaul, because you have a lot of guys in the rotation hitting for agency right now. So you're going to see a whole new different rotation, and you're going to see a whole new bullpen next year. And along with that, the coaching staff, in terms of Chavez, Hefner, they got to go. They have to revamp that whole coaching staff behind Carlos Mendoza, because it's not good enough right now.
Yeah. They need, and especially to back up your point with the Hefner thing further, like, he is familiar with so many of these guys. Why is it that he is not helping, like you said, why is he not helping Mendoza, especially when he's familiar with how certain guys' routines are and how certain guys thrive in certain situations? How is he not being like, hey, maybe try putting Diaz in more games because he does pitch better when he's, getting a lot of outings consecutively? Or, hey, maybe, Reed Garrett doesn't do this well. Why are we using him here? Don't use him here. This and that. Like, I could keep going on, but he's familiar with some of these guys enough to where, he should, what does Hefner even do? I'm trying to understand the fascination with some fans for this guy. I cannot for the life of me understand. I challenge somebody to name me one pitcher he has made better for the long term for this organization or even elsewhere, because cool, Aaron Loop had a good year when he was here. What happened after? He ended up going to the Angels, got that big payday, and he sucked. Taijuan Walker had a decent season. Cool. Goes to the Phillies, sucks. He has not done anything for this organization pitching wise to move me to say this guy should be here going forward. Nevertheless, the GM rumors are a whole different issue, if there's any truth to that, because I want to know what he said to Diaz when he went to the mound today, because like, what is he going up there and saying at this point that it doesn't mean anything? Like, what he says doesn't mean anything. And this is another argument that I hear on Mets Weekly, which will be on their show this week, so go check them out. Frank on Mets Weekly brings this up all the time. For another case for Lindor being MVP, he's coaching better than the rest of the coaching staff. Like, he brought this up with Chavez, how he's a multi-Gold Glove winner, but we never hear about him working with Vientos at third base. It's always Lindor. Who's the one initiating mound visits? You have Francisco Lindor initiating mound visits and calming guys down. And then when Hefner goes out there, it just does the ass opposite. I'm so tired of this.
You want to see what Hefner did to Diaz when he went out there? Pretend this puck's a baseball. Cheer up, Edwin. You see this baseball? Yeah. Throw it in the zone. See, you just got to wind up and throw it.
Hang a slider over the plate to the leadoff header.
Hang a slider so you can let Corbin Carroll just knock this shit out of the park. I don't know what Hefner does apart from he wears his sunglasses, and most of the time he's not even coming out to the fucking mound. Most of the time he sends Alvy out there to do the work for him. Like, yeah, that's a great coach, right? That's a great pitching coach.
It's just the story of this organization, though, where it's the same thing where they underutilize guys, and then you have the ass opposite situations where they could have maximized guys like Colin Holderman, and then they go to different organizations who actually are willing to maximize their potential, and they end up being better talents. Like, it's just so frustrating at this point watching it year in and year out. It's just ridiculous at this point.
Wait, but
And look at what's going on.
wait, but you didn't see Vogelback hit his 88th home run of the year this year?
Yeah, my fault. Yuki, what's going on? Been some time, but this Mets team needs to step up. And also, if they sell the next series, I would say it's done already. I'm not even entertaining the whole, I mean, listen, at this rate, if they lose to the White Sox, at least I don't have to hear the happy-go-lucky crowd push the agenda that this team could make the playoffs still. Like, that's the only bright side to it. Because I really want to just push you, like Carson says, push you down a flight of stairs if you're preaching positivity right now, because I don't know how you could possibly defend this garbage right now. I mean, this is just, and it goes back to this discussions we've had multiple times as well, where they dug themselves too deep of a hole early in the season for them to be pulling this crap.
No, yeah, that's why. Like, listen, you could point to multiple spots when this season eventually wraps up, and you could say the Mets ultimately lost the playoffs here, here, and here. There's multiple spots because you could look at the two series against the Angels and the A's. You could say they lost it there. You could look at the blown games in both the Padres and the and this year's against the Diamondbacks. But ultimately, they buried themselves in May when they started the season 22-33, because you can only. Because look, I get it. Over a 162 game season, there's going to be ups and there will be downs. You won't play a whole baseball season just by consistently winning. It's that won't happen. But because you buried yourself at the beginning so much, you now need to have multiple stretches where you're winning every single game, like what the Mets did in June and July. They had multiple big winning streaks, but you can't allow another big losing streak, and you also have to limit the stretches where you're basically hovering around 500. Like, but that is what happens when you bury yourself early, and it's similar to like what the Rangers did this past year. They got out to an 18-4-1 start. Sure, they were assing towards the end of December and most of January, but because they got out to such a big cushion, they could allow that mini slump, and that's why they still were able to win the President's Trophy. But when you bury yourself early, most of the time, I mean, listen, there are exceptions. Obviously, the Nationals did in 2019. They started 1931. They lost. I mean, they won the World Series. The Braves didn't have a great start to 2021. They won the World Series. So you can come back from those starts, but it's a lot harder to do it at that point.
Yeah. And even the Diamondbacks last year who went to the World Series, but you know what the difference was with the Diamondbacks last year? They were able to get in with winning 84 games. You know what the difference is with the Braves? The Mets had a gigantic collapse, and it only took 88 wins for the Braves to win the division that season and then go on to win the World Series. You know what the difference is with the Nationals in 2019? There were a bunch of teams that were struggling down the stretch there, including the Mets, who were blowing games constantly, which allowed the Nationals to leapfrog them and get 90-plus wins. But, mostly obviously 2021 and last year with the Diamondbacks are better examples with that. And then, you want to look back even at 2022 with the Phillies. Like, the Phillies started off slow, went to the World Series that year, but it was 87 wins. The Mets are... And it's unfortunate, but this year it's going to take more than that amount of wins to make the playoffs. And we said it going into the year, and I thought 87 wins was what they were going to get and make the playoffs with that. But it's going to take more than that. And I don't even know if they're an 87 win team at this rate. Like, at this rate, I think that they're probably going to be an 84 win team, which would have got you in last year, but it just doesn't this year.
I mean, pretty much our evaluation going into the year was was pretty spot on because I pretty much gave a range that they were going to win anywhere from 75 to 87 games. And if you average that out, that probably comes to like 83, 84 wins, 82 wins. So they're pretty much like what we said they were, a 500 team. And if certain results go right, then sure you could get into the postseason. But I mean, like they're a 500 team, but you could clearly see that there is something with this roster that you can build on from. It sucks, and it's going to be a disappointment that they don't make the postseason this year because in reality they should have, but they just too many inconsistent stretches from the offense. Too many times the bullpen blew away. Obviously, the whole year, and I get it. Sean Manaea has pitched really well recently, and he's pretty much solidified him being the ace at this point. But the Mets didn't pitch with an ace this whole year, apart from that one Senga start. So I mean,
And
like I said,
Manaea at the start was not pitching
yeah,
at this level.
Manaea wasn't the same guy, but there is pieces that you can work here. If you can just if because listen, this is going to be probably the biggest offseason that this franchise is ever going to have. Because if they smash it out of the park this year, and obviously there's still weeks to go before the offseason, but if they smash it out of the park with this offseason, they can bolster themselves into being a contender next year. They could. But if they don't, it could easily go the other way around. And you're just a mid baseball team that's, scratching onto 85, 87 wins. It's going to be this upcoming offseason. It's going to be the biggest offseason in Mets franchise history.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it just sucks that the Senga thing, since you brought it up briefly, it just feels like once he went down, the ship just completely sunk, and it's annoying because they got to the record they did without Senga, but it feels like, I don't know, it just maybe there was something internally in that clubhouse that's like, we gotta just claw our way until Senga's back, and then they finally get what they wanted back, and then it's gone from them, and it's gone from us, fans especially, in a matter of hours, and it feels like the ship just sunk with it, and they never recovered, and it's stupid, but it's just the reality, it feels like, of what happened, what it is, but yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say even anymore in terms of this game tonight, or just discussion wise in general, because obviously we'll have more to talk about after tomorrow and going forward with a future podcast episode. But a loss like this is just, it's just annoying, and it's just happening way too much to where I wasn't even mad because I saw it coming. Like I literally texted you in our group chat prior to it happening. I was like, this feels like a matter of, when, not if, they're gonna blow this game. It just had that vibe to it, and sure enough, it happened. So I don't know. All I know is that this team's probably, I mean, the postseason, it's like unofficially shot, it feels like, after a night like tonight, because time's just running out.
I don't know. At least at this point, I don't think they'll make the playoffs unless, bar circumstances, the Braves just have an epic collapse. But that's not gonna happen because the Braves, they just find ways to win. And listen, credit to that franchise because they just have that certain factor where doesn't matter who goes down with injuries, doesn't matter who's struggling, they find ways to win. And that's credit to a winning franchise right there. The Mets, even though they've been known as a loser franchise over the past 61 years of their existence, they got to find and develop that trait if they can. But listen, I think at least if they're not going to make the postseason, right, at least go down the stretch here and just push the Braves. Just make them uncomfortable, at least for me. Because at least then you build up that attitude of like, okay, we came close. We built some experience here. And now with the right moves, we could get over the top. But I don't want to see the roster give up. Just push them, keep on winning games.
I mean, yeah, obviously as a fan, I could say what I want. And I'll put my hand up and say that I'm wrong if I end up being wrong and they end up making it. But I don't know. Like with the way, and I get that the Braves have to play the Phillies, but the Phillies aren't particularly playing their best baseball as of lately. I know that they killed the Royals and they did win their series against the Astros, but they have their scheduled loss in there with actually no, Taiwan Walker doesn't face the Braves, so that at least helps a bit. But
Yeah, but I
I
got
like
no. Go ahead.
no, what are you gonna say?
Oh no, no. Well, I got to rebuttal this because the Mets play the White Sox. You think that's going to be an easy series?
Yeah, but the Mets are well. The Mets couldn't beat the Marlins. It's like, yeah, we can't even be confident rolling into a series against the freaking White Sox right now. But um, regardless, all half jokes aside, yeah, like I get they play. I get that they play the Phillies, but the Braves are playing still unbelievable baseball right now. And if they split with the Phillies, what does it matter? Because I don't know. It really, because what, the Mets would maybe gain like a game of ground or two, and they're at like 3 or 2 back. I don't know. I don't know. It's just really tough. And the problem that I have is just like what I mentioned earlier, which if you weren't here earlier for the discussion, my whole point is that this team is playing way too inconsistent of baseball to be making the postseason right now. Like, this is, you have to go on a run somewhere here. Like, you're behind. You have to at some point go on a big winning streak, like 6-7 game winning streak. I'm talking. You have to go on that type of winning streak to make the playoffs at this point, because you put yourself behind the 8 ball too much. And sure, if they sweep the Braves in September, that could change things. But realistically, could we expect a sweep? Like, sure, we could ask for, them to win the series there, but that might not be good enough either. I don't know. I just have a hard time being sold on it. But like you said, I don't want the players to give up and the players to just wave the towel, wave the white flag and say, yeah, we're done here. Obviously, I want them to try to make a push here, but I don't know if I see it.
Listen, I mean, you mentioned that inconsistency. That's the definition of a 500 ball club, and that's the unfortunate truth of what this team is right now. They're just an inconsistent ball club, a team without a true ace, a team with a lineup that goes through so much up and down in terms of sways. I mean, this lineup under Eric Chavez, and the whole time he's been here through 2022 to now, it's been the most bipolar lineup I've ever seen. Because this lineup, when it's hot, it's hot. Everybody's hitting at the same time. But when it's cold, I mean, it looks like you got 9 guys up there who's never swung a bat before. And and that is not an understatement.
Yeah, and it's, again, this offense just scores in bunches too. It's like they mail it in for an inning and then they're just done for the night. And you just cannot expect to win that way. You just can't. But
I was even gonna mention, like, because you brought up the point that like they push, like, let's say, like, they push the Braves to the end, right? And somehow they sweep the Braves in Atlanta somehow, right? Then they got to go to Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's not exactly a fun place for the Mets to go either, because they struggle a lot in Milwaukee. But so many things have to go right before we even get to that portion of the year. But I don't know. Like I said before, I just don't want the players to give up. Just push the Braves all the way. Just make them feel uncomfortable and at least develop a sense of confidence. It's like, okay, we came up short this year, but let's go again. Let's go in the off season. Let's regroup. Let's spend big, and let's have another shot at this again. Because, like I said, there's pieces of this roster that you can work with. There's pieces of this roster that you can say, okay, I can trust in this guy, and I see this guy's a vital piece for a World Series team. There is. They just have to get it right.
yeah, which obviously we'll get into the bulk of that discussion on future podcast episodes and everything. But it is 1 a.m., so I think we'll end it here. So thank you everyone that did tune in to watch this late night post game. If you're watching on replay, we appreciate it as well. Please be sure to leave a like, though, on your way out. As we end the stream here, don't forget to subscribe if you guys are new, especially if you're a Mets fan. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Mets Central. And we will see you guys in the next one.